Jennifer dropped several coins into the coffee machine, and as she waited for a small cup of hot beverage to fill her hands, she slowly sank into a small couch in the office lobby. It was Jennifer's break, so she could take a moment to relax and contemplate what to do next. Jennifer was 23 years old, an age when young women were supposed to go on dates and enjoy life. However, Jennifer's fate was far different from that of her more fortunate peers. She took her phone out of her work uniform's pocket and dialed the number of the person closest to her heart. "Mom, hello. How are you? Is everything okay? What did the doctor say?" Jennifer asked anxiously. "Oh dear, don't worry so much," her mother replied. "I saw the doctor, and it's nothing serious. He says I just need more rest and prescribed some heart medication." Upon hearing about the medication, Jennifer tensed. Medication? So there is something serious, isn't there? A deep sigh came from the other end of the line. "Mom," Jennifer asked slowly, "are you keeping something from me again?" "All right, sweetie. You can't hide anything from you," her mother admitted. "The doctors didn't like my electrocardiogram. They said I need treatment, but the medications for intravenous therapy are very expensive, and they don't have them right now." "Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Jennifer asked with concern. "When are you going to the hospital?" Jennifer almost imagined her mother, Christina, nodding guiltily on the other end of the phone. "It's a substantial sum, like 3 of your paychecks. Maybe I'll manage without this treatment. Perhaps it will pass on its own." "Don't talk nonsense," Jennifer protested. "I'll figure something out. We'll get your heart treated. But the doctor insists that I should be admitted to the hospital next week," Christina said. "Where will you get that kind of money?" "That's my problem," Jennifer replied calmly and added, "I'll talk to our boss, explain everything. I hope he'll understand. After all, he's also a human being." After saying goodbye to her mother, Jennifer contemplated. It was Monday, and her mother said she needed to go to the hospital next Tuesday. So today, she would talk to Michael and ask for a raise. Incidentally, they were supposed to receive their paychecks this Friday. Jennifer gazed out of the window, lost in thought. Her mother was the dearest person to her, and Jennifer was ready to do anything to ensure her speedy recovery. As she watched the birds fly by, she involuntarily drifted into her own memories. As far back as Jennifer could remember, she and her mother had always lived together. She had never known her father, and Christine avoided talking about him. "I can only say one thing about him, Jennifer. Your father treated me very poorly, so you don't need to worry about not having a relationship with him," her mother had told her once, and Jennifer had never brought up the topic again. The little girl understood how difficult things were for her mother, and she did her best to help, at least with household chores. After school, while her mother was at work, Jennifer would sweep their small one-bedroom apartment and clean the floors. Then, she would prepare a simple dinner from whatever ingredients were left in the fridge. Christina was grateful for even this small but valuable help and did everything in her power to ensure that Jennifer lacked for nothing. Jennifer always had decent clothes, not just from sales but from regular stores, and her backpack was always filled with new paints and pencils. Christina knew how much her daughter loved to draw and wanted her to feel confident in her art classes. To make her daughter happy, Jennifer's mother had to work 3 jobs: waitressing during the day at a small city cafe and cleaning wealthy people's homes in the evenings, often as a temporary housekeeper. Christina would return home, most of the time after midnight, and she was exhausted. Such a grueling job was taking a toll on her health and strength, but it allowed her to feel somewhat independent in the face of challenging circumstances. Jennifer saw her mother's daily exhaustion, and she grew up with a firm conviction that after finishing school, she would become her mother's reliable support. "Mom, dear, just wait a little longer," Jennifer would say, stroking her mother's hand as Christina collapsed onto the bed after another night of work. "I'll finish school, and then I'll work immediately. You won't have to work so hard anymore." Pale from exhaustion, her mother would weakly smile and gently squeeze Jennifer's slender hand. "Sweetheart, don't think about me right now. Your main task is to finish school and get into a university. You absolutely must get a higher education, only then will you achieve something in this life." Jennifer felt a deep sadness seeing her mother's worn-out smile, and it brought tears to her eyes. She would lie down next to her mother on the bed, curl up, and quietly shed tears of childlike powerlessness. Several more years flew by unnoticed. By the time of her high school graduation, Jennifer had firmly decided not to attend the prom. She didn't want to throw money away on it. A good dress, shoes, and a beautiful hair styled and by a salon stylist all came at a considerable cost, and Jennifer couldn't justify spending so much for just one evening. Moreover, she was a modest and quiet girl by nature, and noisy parties were never her cup of tea. However, her mother, upon learning of her decision, was both surprised and disappointed. "Dear, you can't do this. You must go to the prom," her mother advised. "Such an event only happens once in a lifetime. You can't miss it." "Mom, please, don't," Jennifer protested. "What am I going to do there? I don't have a dress, and I don't want to buy an expensive outfit just to show off for a couple of hours." In response, Christina shook her head. "Silly girl, it's not just about the dress. The prom is a celebration of youth, a symbol of transition into a bright future. Please, my dear, don't deny yourself this joy." Jennifer hesitated. On one hand, her mother was right, but on the other hand, she said it wasn't about the dress. Then Christina seemed to read her thoughts and led her into her room. "Come with me, sweetie. I'll show you something." Before entering her daughter's room, the mother gently covered Jennifer's eyes with her hands. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Shh, just trust me." When Christina uncovered Jennifer's eyes, the girl first screamed with delight, hugging the dress tightly to her chest, and then tears of happiness and gratitude rolled down her cheeks. "Mommy, how, why?" Jennifer couldn't find the words, looking at the magnificent light lilac dress beautifully laid out on her mother's bed. The lush three-layered skirt was made of the softest, semi-transparent fabric, under which a delicate silk lining could be seen. Wide straps and an elegant dark purple belt made the dress resemble a princess gown. "It's so beautiful. When did you manage to get this?" "Last Tuesday, right after they announced the prom at the parent-teacher meeting." Christina blushed in embarrassment. "I couldn't let my daughter go without a dress." "Mom," Jennifer whispered in astonishment, "you have no idea how much I love you." "I know, sweetheart, I know." Christina embraced her daughter, who was crying from an overflow of emotions. Jennifer understood that her mother must have spent a significant sum, and she couldn't fathom where she had found it. However, when they broke their embrace, Jennifer noticed something subtly different about her mother's appearance. "Mom," Jennifer said in amazement, "where are your earrings?" In response, Christina simply waved her hand. "Oh, don't worry, dear. I pawned them, and they gave me good money. Don't tell me you sold your only pair of gold earrings just to buy me this dress." The woman lowered her gaze, but her daughter noticed the tears welling up in her eyes. "You shouldn't think about it, sweetheart. After all, what do I need those earrings for? I've worn them for so many years, and now at least there's some purpose to them." "No, this is not right," Jennifer exclaimed with regret. "We will go to the store right now and get everything back, and then we'll redeem your earrings." Jennifer had already grabbed the dress when Christina gently took her by the hand and softly requested, "Please, my girl, I understand that you're upset, but I wanted the day of your graduation to be remembered as something wonderful." Jennifer looked at her mother, realizing that she had done it out of the purest intentions. Finally, she gave in. "All right, Mom, but promise me that we'll get your earrings back as soon as we can. I can't bear the thought of them sitting in the pawn shop showcase." "Of course," Christina nodded, smiling. "If I can earn some money, I'll retrieve them right away." At the prom, Jennifer was one of the most beautiful students in the entire school. She radiated a quiet, mysterious beauty that unwittingly drew the attention of most people around her. Despite all the attention and compliments she received that evening, she still felt a sense of guilt. Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that it had cost her mother her most precious possession. "I will definitely return Mom's earrings," Jennifer thought to herself. "I promise myself that I will do it on the very day I earn my first paycheck." After finishing high school, Jennifer devoted all her efforts to preparing for the entrance exams to the university. Jennifer had always been passionate about drawing and landscaping, so she decided to apply to the Department of Landscape Design. Knowing the fierce competition there, she studied day and night to secure a spot with a scholarship. Christina supported her daughter throughout this endeavor. working multiple jobs while Jennifer prepared for her exams. It was a tremendous struggle, but Jennifer managed to be among the fortunate few who earned a tuition-free seat at the university. When Christina learned of Jennifer's acceptance into the university, her joy knew no bounds. She cried, laughed, and constantly hugged and kissed her Jennifer. The pride Christina felt for her daughter, who had overcome stiff competition to study in her dream field, was immeasurable. Receiving her first scholarship and adding her own savings, Jennifer immediately went to the pawn shop, where her mother had taken her gold earrings. Fortunately, they were still there. Jennifer, with trembling hands, wrapped the earrings in a handkerchief and brought them home. "Jennifer, darling," Christina exclaimed in amazement. "I can't believe my eyes, you've actually managed to retrieve these earrings." "These are your earrings, Mom. Our family heirloom," Jennifer replied with a smile. "I promised you'd wear them again." On her third year of university, Jennifer met Desmond. They stood in line together at the library, waiting to get their textbooks. Desmond turned out to be a cheerful and kind guy, and he struck up a conversation with the girl in front of him. Jennifer was drawn to the tall, blonde young man, who she later discovered was studying agricultural engineering. Desmond was also well-read, and their conversations were a delight. They initially met often in the library, and then Desmond mustered the courage to ask Jennifer out on a date, to which she happily agreed. Sitting in a small cafe, they shared stories about themselves, their plans, and dreams. "So, you dream of planting trees and flowers in parks?" Desmond playfully asked. "Not exactly," Jennifer replied with a laugh. "The work of a landscape designer involves more than that. It includes site layout, creating an overall design concept." "I dream of winning motocross races," Desmond dreamily mentioned. "There's a big competition coming up in 6 months, and they promise a substantial cash prize." "So, you're an extreme sports enthusiast?" Jennifer asked in genuine surprise. "You could say that," Desmond replied, a bit evasively. "I'm studying here not entirely by choice. My father insisted I get a proper education, or he wouldn't support my true passion." "That's why you often skip classes," Jennifer realized. "You must have regular training sessions." "See, for me, motorbike racing is my whole life," Desmond explained excitedly. "You can't even imagine the rush I feel when I'm on the track. It's an adrenaline high, like flying." The more Desmond shared about his life and love for motorcycles, the brighter his eyes shone. Jennifer understood that motorsports were his primary passion, similar to how drawing and studying were her own. However, Desmond often prioritized his hobby over academics, and Jennifer found herself worrying about him. Desmond, on the other hand, didn't see any danger in his choices. He assured Jennifer that everything was under control. Several more months passed, and Jennifer and Desmond began dating. Their mutual attraction quickly turned into deep and genuine love. The couple planned to get married after completing their university studies. However, just before their final exams, a shocking revelation surfaced. Desmond had accumulated significant debts related to his education. He hadn't even passed the majority of his exams, and he never retook them. "Desmond, how could you not tell me about this? Do you realize your name is on the expulsion list?" Jennifer exclaimed. "It doesn't mean anything, Jennifer." Desmond shook his head. "They do this every year, but who would expel a student who's paying his own way? Don't worry." Jennifer couldn't believe her ears, listening to Desmond's nonchalant response. It seemed he didn't fully grasp the seriousness of his situation. To Jennifer's horror, things started to unfold like a nightmare. Desmond's father, upon learning that his son had essentially dropped out of university, refused to provide any financial assistance. As a result, Desmond was expelled from the university, and he had no other option but to enlist in the army. Jennifer cried uncontrollably as she bid her beloved farewell, hugging him as tightly as she could. She couldn't believe that what was happening to them was real. "I'll be waiting for you, Desmond," Jennifer whispered in his ear, then kissed him passionately, pouring all her love and despair into that kiss. "Just write to me often, okay? Jennifer, my love, everything will be fine," Desmond reassured her, embracing her tightly in return. "Wait for me, and when I return, we'll get married. Have children, everything will be okay." "You silly," Jennifer could only say, gazing at Desmond with tenderness. It was excruciating for Jennifer to realize that her fiancé would have to serve in the military due to his own recklessness. "If you write to him every week," her mother advised, "he'll know that you need him, and it will make it easier for him to endure the hardships of army life. Have faith in him, my dear, and with time, God willing, everything will be all right." Jennifer sent letters to her beloved every week, updating him on her life and reaffirming her love for him. Desmond replied regularly, describing his experiences and assuring Jennifer that he was settling into army life. Each time, instead of a signature, he drew 3 large hearts for Jennifer, followed by the words, "With love, always yours, Desmond." A month after Desmond left for the army, Jennifer realized she was expecting his child. "You must definitely write to him about this, dear," Jennifer's mother advised. "A man should know about such things." "Of course, Mom," the young woman reassured her, "but I'm worried about something else. How am I going to continue my studies?" Jennifer was concerned that she wouldn't be able to complete her university education on time. On the one hand, her options were either to transfer to a distance learning program or take an academic leave. After careful consideration, she chose the latter. She wanted to start working as soon as possible to contribute financially to her mother's support. The two of them continued to live together, and Jennifer understood that she couldn't rely solely on her mother, especially now that she was pregnant. Besides, she believed that when Desmond returned from the army, things would become easier. Desmond was thrilled to learn that he would be a father. He promised Jennifer that upon his return, he would do everything in his power to ensure that she, their child, and Christina would want for nothing. The young man was ecstatic he was about to become a father, and in every subsequent letter, he asked Jennifer to take care of herself and rest as much as possible. Jennifer wiped away tears as she read her beloved's romantic messages. She gently kissed the rough paper, then neatly folded the letter and placed it in a special box where she kept their entire correspondence. It took Jennifer about a month to find a job because very few employers wanted to hire someone without experience. Frustrated by her situation, Jennifer had to consider simpler positions. However, luck finally smiled upon her. The owner of a trading firm was in urgent need of an office cleaner and was willing to hire Jennifer despite her pregnancy. How could I refuse such a charming young lady? Michael, the company's director, said, slightly stumbling over his words during the interview. "Of course, I'm not thrilled that you're pregnant," he continued, "but given the shortage of staff in my office, I'll hire you." Jennifer thanked him, managing to summon a polite smile. She was unpleasantly surprised by her future boss's overt behavior and the strong smell of alcohol emanating from him. Nevertheless, Jennifer desperately needed this job, so she decided to ignore her boss's peculiar actions. She thought to herself, "I'll manage somehow." Later, other office employees explained to her that if it weren't for her attractive appearance, Michael would likely not have hired her. "He has this quirk," a colleague told her. "He likes having pretty young women around. There used to be another young cleaner here, but she left, saying she'd rather mop floors at a shopping center than endure that idiot's harassment." Upon hearing this, Jennifer simply sighed. It seemed her concerns about her troublesome boss were not unfounded, but did she really have a choice? Jennifer continued to work for Michael's company. She overheard her colleagues discussing their boss's personal life, or rather, the complete absence of it. By the age of 55, Michael had never married or had children. Furthermore, he had never been married, which seemed a bit odd to those around him. Naturally, no one dared to ask him directly about it, knowing his difficult temperament. Doing so would be equivalent to immediately submitting a resignation letter. Jennifer gathered from these conversations that, in his past, Michael had been a promising and highly regarded doctor. However, for some unknown reason, he abruptly severed all ties with the medical profession. Later, he ventured into business, making it his primary focus in life. However, due to his stern and irritable nature, he often failed to secure deals with the best possible terms for his company. Of course, none of his employees could fathom that deep down, all these years, Michael had genuinely missed practicing medicine. It so happened that he unconsciously transferred all his negative emotions from his previous job to his own business. Jennifer, aware of her boss's difficult character, decided to play by the rules and simply focus on doing her job as efficiently as possible to avoid giving him any reason for criticism. The next 4 months flew by unnoticed for Jennifer. Her belly had visibly rounded, protruding from under her work smock, making it increasingly challenging to fasten all the buttons. Jennifer had become accustomed to her job and overall was content with it. It didn't demand anything extraordinary from her, just keeping the office clean, dusting on time, watering the plants, and, whenever possible, avoiding the director when he was in a foul mood. However, the one thing that seriously troubled her was her meager salary. For some reason, Michael believed that he paid the cleaner more than enough, even though cleaners in other companies earned significantly more. This couldn't help but bring sad thoughts to Jennifer's mind, especially since her mother was ill. Christina had been on sick leave for 2 weeks due to heart problems. Initially, the young cleaner had wanted to approach her boss immediately after speaking with her mother on the phone. However, Jennifer soon realized that she wasn't ready to storm into the director's office and demand a raise on the spot. Her colleagues also discouraged her. "Jennifer, what are you thinking? Spare your nerves, think it through before taking such a risk." "But I have every right to do this," Jennifer retorted. "Why should a cleaner here earn less than at the supermarket? I'll explain it all to him, and I'm sure Michael will understand." Instead of a response, the head of the HR department simply shook her head sadly. "Do you think he's ever been interested in our opinion?" "No, Jennifer. Michael is an extremely tough and selfish person. I'm afraid you might end up without a job if you cross him." However, Jennifer was determined. After thanking the woman for her advice, the cleaner asked the secretary for the time when their boss would be available. "Are you seriously planning to ask for a raise?" The secretary raised an eyebrow, asking in a mocking tone. "Yes, I am. What's so surprising about it?" "You are so naive," she replied with a venomous smile. "He'll fire you on the spot. He won't even care that you're expecting a child." The entire office seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the upcoming show with the cleaner. Jennifer confidently approached his office and knocked. "Come in," the director barked, and Jennifer boldly crossed the threshold. "Hello," Jennifer said and looked the director squarely in the eyes. He reluctantly returned the greeting, then promptly urged her to get to the point. "Well, come on, tell me what you want. I have a meeting in half an hour, and I haven't even had my coffee yet." "Michael, I need you to increase my salary, at least by 40%, Jennifer began resolutely. Entering the director's office, the expectant mother realized that she had effectively cut off any possibility of retreat. She was determined to engage in this unpleasant dialogue right away. "What?" the man exclaimed, his face contorted and his skin turning blotchy. The director was furious. "Why didn't you ask for everything then? Or maybe I should pay you as my deputy? Have you completely lost your mind?" Jennifer felt her face flush with anger. The boss continued hurling insults at her, and each barb sent a shiver down the pregnant woman's spine. She had never been humiliated like this before. "For what reason do I owe you such a raise?" he continued his tirade. "Is it for watering the plants every 2 days, or perhaps for vacuuming with a cordless vacuum? Mind you, there's a line of people like you waiting outside my gate. Don't like it here? Fine, submit your resignation and go your own way." The more the director shouted at her, the more Jennifer's anger swelled. Surprisingly, his behavior didn't break her. Instead, it strengthened her resolve to stand her ground. "Stop insulting me," the cleaner couldn't hold back, telling Michael, "Michael, aren't you ashamed to speak to a woman like this? I clean your office all day long. I only get 15 minutes for lunch. How you treat your employees is outrageous. Besides, I don't need this money for myself. My mother has a heart condition, and she needs expensive medication." The businessman hadn't anticipated such resistance. Normally, everyone would scatter when he so much as furrowed his brow, but this time, "I can see you've completely lost your mind, speaking to me like this," Jennifer shouted in his face, her anger palpable. "Do you think being pregnant gives you a free pass? I can't legally fire you, but I can make your life so miserable that you'll leave on your own. You won't see even a penny of this little raise you're demanding. Is that what you want?" At this point, Jennifer felt a sudden, suspicious pain in her lower abdomen and, screaming in fear and pain, clutched her stomach. Above all, she feared for her baby. Michael, noticing her reaction, slightly tempered his anger, but he had no intention of continuing this aggravating conversation any further. "Get out of here while nothing has happened to you or your child," he warned. "And don't come to me with such nonsense again. Understood?" Jennifer nodded, fighting back the lump of humiliation and tears in her throat. She didn't know that at that very moment, the secretary was eavesdropping through the keyhole and heard their entire conversation. With a satisfied smile, the gossip monger returned to her desk, planning to share the story with other employees later. For her, it was all just one big joke, and she never considered the feelings of the hapless cleaner. "Well, did you manage to squeeze a triple salary out of him?" the secretary asked with a smug grin when Jennifer walked by, tears in her eyes. Jennifer didn't respond, instead clenching her fists tightly. She rushed to the utility room, where she could finally let her tears flow. It was the first time in her life that Jennifer had experienced such humiliation. She felt like she wanted to disappear into the ground due to the shame. Meanwhile, the secretary smirked, watching Jennifer's humiliation, and within half an hour, the whole office was talking about how the cleaner, who dared to challenge the director, not only didn't get a raise but was almost fined for her audacious behavior. Naturally, after this incident, some of the office workers began to quietly mock the cleaner. She tried to ignore the poisonous taunts, but she had to endure these venomous jabs. Jennifer continued to feverishly think about where she could get the money for her mother's treatment. She even considered taking out a loan, but it was unlikely that a pregnant cleaner would be approved for even a relatively small amount. And how would she repay it? Not knowing what to do next, Jennifer cried in helplessness. She sat on a bench in the park, tears staining her reddened eyes as she stared at the date circled in blue ink on her pocket calendar. Her mother was scheduled to be admitted to the hospital in just 3 days, and she still hadn't resolved the issue of money. Meanwhile, Michael sat silently in his office, gazing at the glass of whiskey before him. The man felt belated remorse for how poorly he had treated the young cleaner. After all, she had always been so modest and quiet, making an effort not to be a bother to him. "The girl said her mother was ill, and I yelled at her like a fool, insulting her to the point where she almost went into premature labor. What an idiot you are, Michael." The company's director scolded himself aloud. What if there's actually something serious going on? What if her mother really needs urgent help? The businessman fretted. Finally, after making a decision, Michael got up and poured the contents of his glass down the trash can. "No, I can't leave it like this," he thought to himself. "I need to find the girl, apologize to her, and maybe even help her and her mother." Jennifer had a day off that day, so the company's boss went to the HR department to find out her address. When he arrived at the old house on the outskirts of the city, he felt a painful pang of shame for his own behavior. Climbing up to the right floor, the man rang the doorbell of the weathered wooden door. Initially, there was no response to his calls, and he was beginning to lose hope. But as he started to descend the stairs, he heard the slow turn of a key in the lock. "Excuse me, did you want something?" came the voice of Jennifer's mother, freezing him from the inside. Unable to believe his eyes, Michael slowly turned and saw her. "Christina," he could only manage to say. "Yes," she cautiously replied, squinting to discern the man's face in the semi-darkness. After a few moments, she realized who it was and opened her mouth in astonishment. "Michael, is it really you?" "Christina," he uttered with trembling lips, and in the next moment, he was pressing Jennifer's mother's hand to his lips. "My dear, my beloved," he whispered. "How could we have lost touch for so many years?" Christina sadly shook her head. "You know perfectly well why, Michael. It was you who rejected me back then, but why dwell on the past? Come in, I'll make you some tea." Christina was Michael's first love, whom he had foolishly parted ways with in the past. This separation had stretched over many years, but the businessman had still held the image of his beloved in his heart all that time. That's why, all these years, he couldn't bring himself to marry and start a family. Michael loved only one woman, and that woman was Jennifer's mother. As they sat in the kitchen, with the woman pouring tea for the businessman, he couldn't help but notice how much she had aged and grown thinner over the years. Despite her relatively young age, Christina appeared pale and worn. The shock he had just experienced had a sobering effect on Michael, as if a bucket of icy water had been poured over his head. It felt as though he had been in a dream all these years, and he was only now fully awakening. Christina, back then, I couldn't think straight at all. The tears glistened in the corners of the man's eyes, and Christina understood that he was telling the truth. Remember that I used to work as a doctor. They predicted a brilliant career for me. I remember. Jennifer's mother smiled wryly. I thought you left me because of that career. No, it wasn't like that at all, the businessman denied. In reality, it was all due to the problems that arose because of one unfortunate incident. The man cast his eyes down. It was difficult for him to recall those events. We were responding to another call that day. A woman felt unwell, right at the bus stop, and it turned out to be premature labor. At first, everything was going well, and she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. But then, it turned out the woman was carrying twins. The first baby came out fine, but the second one, he got tangled in the umbilical cord. I did everything I could, but, to my immense regret, the child didn't survive. Christina covered her face in horror. My God, she barely managed to whisper. The businessman nodded. The woman's husband blamed me for everything. Naturally, the head doctor sided with the patient. We never went to court, thank God, but the medical board issued a clear verdict against me. They fired you? Christina asked softly. Yes. Not a single hospital or private clinic in the city wanted to work with me anymore. I fell into such a depression, started drinking, and for the next couple of years, very little interested me except for a bottle of alcohol. With great difficulty, I managed to quit drinking, and I started moving towards establishing my own business. It was the only way for me not to lose my mind and somehow get my life back on track. Why didn't you tell me anything back then? Christina, astonished, looked at her former lover. When I came to you, do you remember? Your words hurt me deeply then. I don't need you anymore. Christina, I don't want to see you or anyone else. The man looked at the woman with heavy eyes, filled with indescribable pain, remorse, and self-loathing. I treated you monstrously, Christina. I realize that now, but I couldn't tell you anything. I was ashamed in front of you and myself. I was so tormented, thinking that I had caused the death of that poor baby with my own hands. I was lost and bitter about my fate. Only now do I understand what a terrible mistake I made when I left you. Christina saw that the businessman was speaking from the heart. Painful as it was, she could understand his feelings. There's no need to dwell on the past. She touched his hand gently. But you should know that on the day you closed the door in front of me and I left for my hometown, I was already carrying your daughter in my womb. I wanted to tell you about it, but I was too hurt by you, and in the end, I decided to keep it a secret. Understand, I thought neither I nor our child were wanted by you. Michael looked up at her, and his eyes revealed genuine shock. What? He asked quietly. Did you say I have a daughter? Yes, she nodded. Jennifer is about to come back from the hospital. She had a scheduled ultrasound today. The businessman jumped to his feet. Overwhelmed by emotions and the flood of information, he felt like the ground beneath him was literally swaying, and his head was spinning. Only now did he remember why he had come here in the first place. If you want, we can do a DNA test to make sure. Christina calmly finished her thought. However, this was unnecessary for the uninvited guest. He already believed his former lover. He just couldn't come to terms with the fact that the girl he had recently humiliated was his own daughter. Mom, Jennifer called out as she entered the kitchen, seeing who had come to visit them. The young woman turned pale instantly. Sweetheart, please sit down, her mother lovingly requested. Michael and I need to tell you something. Learning that her stubborn boss was her father, Jennifer experienced mixed feelings. On one hand, she was angry with Michael for leaving them alone back then. It was because of him that her mother had to go through so many difficult and unhappy years. But on the other hand, Jennifer could see that her mother was pleased to reconnect with her former fiancé. Perhaps deep down in her heart, Christina still harbored tender and profound feelings for the businessman. Did Jennifer have the right to interfere in their relationship? Or of course not. Michael pledged to do whatever it took to help Christina recover quickly. This meant he was ready to cover all the costs of her necessary medications and additional treatment, as recommended by her doctor. At first, both Christina and Jennifer adamantly refused his assistance. However, he eventually persuaded them to accept it. He explained to them that it was his way of compensating for all those years they had to live without him. "Don't think that after this, I'll come running into your arms," Jennifer said with a cold tone when they settled everything regarding Christina's treatment. "I'm grateful for your help, but that's as far as it goes. If it weren't for my mom's urgent treatment, I'd never take money from you. And one more thing, I'm quitting your company. I can't work for someone who doesn't appreciate those who contribute to his firm." "I understand," the businessman nodded. "Jennifer, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I'm only asking you for one thing. Will you allow me to see my grandchild when he's born?" Jennifer looked at her father intently and then nodded. "Of course, you're his grandfather, and I won't stand in the way of your relationship with him." With that, Jennifer exchanged a meaningful glance with her mother, as if to say, "Who would have thought things would turn out this way?" Christina responded with a grateful smile. Despite her resentment toward her former fiancé, she was glad that her daughter had met him, even after all these years. Several months passed. Jennifer gave birth to a beautiful and healthy baby boy, whom she and Desmond named Charlie. They had chosen the name back when Desmond was still in the army. He couldn't wait to return home and see his fiancée with their son. Michael adored his grandson and often visited, showering Charlie with gifts. Jennifer remained reserved in her interactions with her son's grandfather, trying to avoid spending time with him when he came over. Meanwhile, Christina had fully recovered after a wonderful stay at a sanatorium. She couldn't help but smile as she watched little Charlie happily babbling in Michael's arms. Soon, Desmond returned from the army. The joy of the young couple knew no bounds as they reunited at the train station. Desmond lovingly embraced his fiancée and their little one, expressing his delight. "Wow, you've given birth to a little giant," Desmond exclaimed as he gazed at his son. "He definitely takes after me." Jennifer blushed and buried her face in her beloved's shoulder. The couple began preparing for their wedding, with Jennifer, her mother, and Michael fully engaged in the preparations. Michael was eager to help, despite his daughter's continued indifference towards him. However, on the day of the celebration, something happened that made Michael's hair stand on end. Figuratively speaking, it all began when he saw the groom's father, who had also been invited to the event. Upon meeting him, Michael realized that there could be no mistake. "I can't believe my eyes," exclaimed James, Desmond's father, rushing over to Michael. "How dare you show up here, especially on this day? Do you have no shame? How did you even find out that my son is getting married today?" "Calm down, please." Michael tried to free himself from James's grip as he was openly confronted. "I'm here as an honored guest, just like you. Your son is marrying my own daughter." "What? How dare you shamelessly lie like that?" James was about to strike, but at that moment, his son Desmond, who had noticed the brewing conflict from afar, intervened. "Dad, that's enough. What are you doing here? Why did you attack Michael?" Desmond demanded. "Is it true, son?" his father asked. "You don't know anything." Desmond frowned. "What's going on?" "It was because of this man that your brother died many years ago." James gritted his teeth. "I still want to kill him when I think about it. If your mother were alive, she wouldn't approve of this man becoming your relative. I said it back then, and I'll say it now. It was an accident," Michael declared. "Do you think I've lived peacefully all these years? The tragedy with your son cost me not only my career but also my family, which I lost." Christina and Jennifer, in their wedding attire, had quietly approached the men. "James, please, let's not darken this joyous occasion," Jennifer's mother said in a gentle tone. "So, you're the doctor who couldn't save my late brother?" Desmond looked Michael directly in the eyes, tears glistening on his lashes. "I'm deeply sorry, Desmond," Michael said, bowing his head. "If you want, you have every right to kick me out of here, but I want you to promise me that you'll make my daughter happy." Desmond took deep breaths, torn about how to react. A whirlwind of emotions overwhelmed him, but in the end, he decided that he wouldn't let the shadow of the past darken his present and promising future, which he had awaited for so long. "I forgive you, Michael," he said with a trembling voice. "What happened back then cannot be changed, but you've given me the best gift you possibly could. You've given me Jennifer, and for that, I forgive you." "Son." James looked at his son with indignation, but Christina gently touched his shoulder. "Your son is incredibly wise," she said. "I understand your pain, but please allow our children to be happy." The sins of the fathers should not affect their future. James paused for a moment, then let out a deep sigh. Well, what now, really? Should we hug or something? After all, we're family now, he said. He opened his wide arms and embraced both his son and Michael at the same time. After a while, when the guests had moved to the table, Michael remained alone with his former fiancée and daughter. He looked uncertainly at Christina, then at Jennifer. What you did today was a very brave act. Christina told him. For the first time, you not only acknowledged your mistakes but also sacrificed your own interests, agreeing to leave the celebration if Desmond wanted it. You've changed, Michael. Mama's right, Dad. Jennifer chimed in. If you had caused a scene, I might never have forgiven you, but you were willing to leave, maybe even for good, just to make Mom and me happy. I forgive you, and I want you to be a part of our lives, even if it's just for now. Especially since Mom still loves you. Jennifer, Christina exclaimed, blushing, but they both knew it was true. Tears welled up in the man's eyes, streaming down his cheeks. My girls, my beloved girls. He embraced both women and then kissed each of them, lingering a bit longer on Christina's cheek. Thank you for giving me a second chance, he whispered. I swear I'll never let you down again. Never, until my very last breath. Just be with us for as long as you can. Jennifer gently leaned into him. Grow old with me, see your grandchild, and that's all we ask. Let's go to the table, Jennifer cheerfully suggested. Desmond and I are about to perform our bride and groom dance. I want you both to sit nearby and watch. White petals rained down from the floral garland as the happy family passed underneath. They had found each other after years and had rediscovered forgiveness in their souls, bringing peace and hope back into their lives. Tomorrow was sure to be filled with nothing but joyful hours, but joyful hours, but joyful hours, but joyful hours, but joyful hours.